I'm Shirley Lincoln Lipsey, and I was born in November 21st, 1926. And I was born in Omaha, and we lived on 38th Street, North 38th Street, and
And I'm Jim Lipsey. I'm fortunate enough to be Shirley's husband. And I was born on April 2, 1921. As you can readily see, I was a day late from April Fool's Day. And I was born in Omaha. And let's see.
Tell me about your parents, Jim.
Well, my father was Joe Lipsey, and my mother was Tilly Lipsey. And my father came to this country when he was 2 years old, and my mother came here when she was 16, and they both came from somewhere. I've got the names here in Poland. And at that time, Poland was kind of confused with Russia, and I'm not sure of the history of which country had title to the shtetl they were born in. At any rate, they both came with their parents, and they settled on, I believe, on South 10th Street originally, where there was a colony, a small colony of immigrant Jews.
What brought them to Omaha?
Well, that's interesting. I had an uncle named Ike Abrahamson, and Uncle Ike had come to Omaha. He was considerably older than I, of course, and he was older than my father. And he had come to Omaha as a track worker. I suppose he was something they called a gandy dancer on the Union Pacific Railroad. And that's how he got to Omaha. And as far as I know, he was the first one of our family clan that came to Omaha. And my understanding is that the rest of the family, my parents and the others of our family, followed him to Omaha. And when I knew him, he had a feed store where he sold hay and grains and so on to people that had horses. And his feed store was on North 24th Street, about something like Izzard, or right around there. And I remember going there and smelling that hay, and I loved it. And I used to love to go in there and take a piece of hay and put it in my mouth, and it tasted good when I was a little kid.
And Shirley, tell me about your parents.
well, Daddy was born in Omaha, and his family lived on about 36th and Leavenworth. And I think Grandpa Lincoln had a grocery store there. And my mother came over from Riga, Latvia. And I think some of the family was already here. And then I think they went into the what do you call it? The meat surveying business. It was commercial. They sold to the hotels and stuff. And anyway, she came over when she was 13. And I remember her telling us the story of being I think in the second grade, because she had to learn English. And of course she was a big girl, and she was very embarrassed, but in the end, Mother spoke beautiful English. And she was one of about 9 children, and it was wonderful growing up in Omaha.
Did your mother and father have brothers and sisters that you
Yes,
knew?
they did. Mother came out of a family of, I think, 9, and I think Dad came out of a family of 8. And I really didn't know my grandmother, Lincoln, at all. And of course, I was one of 11 children, and I was in the middle of the family. And by that time, they were old, and of course, life expectancy at that time wasn't long. And anyway, she was gone, and I barely remember my father's father. And then my mother's father, I didn't know at all. And I think I was about 8 or 9 years old when we lost Grandma Simon.
Yeah, but you knew your aunts.
Oh, my aunts, yes.
Aunt Katie.
Oh, yeah, Katie London, when they lived in Council Bluffs. And then...
She was a wonderful character.
Oh, yeah. She had a very heavy accent, and she was just full of life. And I can remember our children were little, and she sort of scared them because she was so...
She came on very strong.
Yeah, yeah. But she was darling.
Yeah.
And then a couple of my other aunts moved away. And then one of my father's brothers was killed during the First World War. And
Well, then your Aunt Ringle, what was her name?
Aunt Petey Ringo.
Yeah, Petey Ringle.
She was adorable. She was the youngest. And then my Aunt Marie, she moved to California, and so did my Aunt Alice.
And Petey's husband Phil, he had a drugstore, the Hamilton drugstore on 50th and
Hamilton.
And Hamilton. And we used to go there and get clown sundaes.
Yeah.
They were out of this world.
Yeah.
Jim, tell me a little bit about your parents.
Well, I have to, if you'll bear with me, I've got to refer to my notes because my memory is not as good as it could be. My father and mother both, as I said before, came from somewhere in Poland, and my father's parents were David and Bessie Lipsey. And we always, my sisters and I had 3 sisters. My sisters and I always referred to them as Bubby and Zadie Pesci. And why, I don't know, except that, well, I guess Pesci, I guess, was my grandmother's Hebrew name. And of course, Bubby and Zadie, you know, that means grandmother and grandfather. And they were both very small people. They were very short, very quiet, very refined. My grandfather was a little guy, and he had white hair when I knew him, and it stood up on his head. He looked kind of like Albert Einstein, and like Einstein, he was a scholar. He was an amateur astronomer. And he used to try to teach me astronomy, and it was very difficult because he had a heavy accent, and I had a hard time understanding him when I was a little kid. But anyway, he did his best, and also he was one of my Malameds. He was one of my Hebrew teachers when he was trying to prepare me for a bar mitzvah. And he was very learned in Hebrew history and language, and the Hebrew language, and the study of the Talmud, and he was and he his name was originally as near as I can determine, and I apologize to everybody because at that time I wasn't interested in the history of my parents, as so many kids weren't, and so I didn't ask any questions, and they never talked about it much. So I don't know what his name had been previous to being Lipschitz, but that was the name that he came to this country with. And my understanding was that, as near as I could determine, his name was something like Moeller. And he was about to be inducted into the Russian army, and he didn't want to be inducted into the Russian army, so he managed to get a passport with the name Lipschitz on it. And so he and his wife Bessie and my father and my father's sister wasn't born yet, and my father came to this country. My father was 2, and when my father was 21 years old, he took his father and down to the courthouse and convinced him to have his name changed from Lipschitz to Lipsey. And that's how we got the name Lipsey.
Very good.
Shirley, tell me about your siblings.
Well, I came out of a family of 11 kids, and I was right smack in the middle. I had 6 brothers and 4 sisters, and my brothers all stayed in Omaha after they were married, and my older sister and I stayed there, and my 3 younger sisters, Betty and Martha and Glory. Glory and Martha went to Kansas City, and Betty went to Dallas. And we still stayed very, very close. And then in 1975, Jimmy and I moved to Tucson. And as of right now, Jimmy and I are going to be married 60 years next month, in March. And we've just loved living here, and it's been wonderful, and we've made a lot of wonderful friends, and it's totally different than Omaha, although we loved living in Omaha. And we've lived longer here as a married couple than we did in Omaha. Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
Let's go back and talk about a typical day in the Lincoln household growing up.
Oh, the Lincoln household? All I know is there was a lot of noise. And I remember my mother being a marvelous cook, and that the house was open to everybody. And also something that I'm really proud of about Mother. And all of us girls learned this from her, that during the Depression, and I was just a little girl at the time, 6 or 7, we had a summer kitchen on off of our kitchen in the house, and we lived in a very large house. And I can remember what we call the homeless today, of people who were so poor, and they would come to the house. I guess word got around that Mother was really a doll. And they would come around, and she had a table out there and chairs, and she would feed them, and she would give them food to take with them. And it's really funny, because today just a couple of days ago, my sisters and I were on a conference call. We do that a lot. And we were talking about the various things that we do with people who just don't have any means. And my little sister Betty, when she sees an article in the paper up in Phoenix, she'll call the paper and she'll find out how she can get in touch with a person who is really in a bad way. And she'll go meet them and visit with them, and she'll buy them whatever it is they need or give them food. And Martha's very much the same way. And Jimmy and I have been involved in a lot of stuff here in Tucson. And it's just that I really owe that all to my mother. And it's something that you just learn at a very early age.
Jimmy, what kind of life was there in the Lipsey household growing up?
Well, it was very different from Shirley's household as she described it and as I knew it. I had three older sisters. My youngest sister was 8 years older than I. That was Millie, and she married Sam Greenberg. And my middle sister, Lil, married Elmer Greenberg, and the two Greenbergs were not related. And my oldest sister, Janet, married Sam Stern. She was 13 years older than I. And it was a very close-knit family. We all got along very well. Everybody liked each other, and it was an idyllic existence. We lived on North 35th Street between Dodge and Davenport. And it was a wonderful life, and my sisters were all wonderful to me. My oldest sister was my surrogate mother. She used to take care of me all the time, and I have a lot of pictures of her, and
She's
the
a
pictures
doll.
of her
She was
were,
a doll.
yeah, she was always carrying me in her arms when I was an infant.
How did your parents meet, Jim?
I really don't know. I know that my father only went to school through the 5th grade, and then he went back to business college or business school, whatever they called it later, and he emerged with beautiful handwriting and with the kind of arithmetic that I could never approach. He could add columns of figures faster than I could do it with an adding machine. And he went into business. He started supporting his father when his father, as I said, was a scholar and was not much of a businessman. And I can remember my father's stories about going around. My grandfather, my father's father, somehow, and I don't know how he came into possession of them, but he came into possession of several rental properties in Omaha. And my father used to talk about how he would go in his horse and buggy. His father would sit in the buggy, and my father would go out and do whatever had to be done, collecting the rents or taking care of the properties, while his father sat in the buggy. And then my father got jobs also when he by the time he was 11 years old, he was working and contributing to the support of his father. And my grandfather, my father's father, and my father's mother moved to Los Angeles when I was young. I must have been in my about 8 or 10, something like that. And my father supported them the rest of their lives, and they both lived to be about in their early 70s. My mother's parents, whom I barely knew, because I was a very small child when they moved from Omaha to Israel. At that time it was Palestine. And they moved there, and I saw pictures of the house they moved into, and they both died in Palestine and are buried there. And
What was a typical day like, or a typical meal like at the Lipsey household?
well, my father, like Shirley's mother, my mother was a wonderful cook, and we all ate at the same time. We all had dinner together, and we all had dinner around the dinner table, and it was my father and mother and my sisters and their husbands and everybody else. All of us came to dinner, and it was a wonderful life. We were a close-knit family. My youngest sister and I, Millie, I was a kind of an irascible little kid, and I caused her a lot of problems, but she was always good to me.
Shirley, I'm dying to hear how the 11 children and your parents sat down to meals.
Well, I'll tell you, that's an interesting question. As I said, we lived in a big house, and I was considered the younger half of the head of the younger half of the family. So we used to eat early, and we would eat in the kitchen. And then we had a lovely breakfast room off of the pantry. And that's where the others ate later, when Daddy would get home from work.
Tell me about your brothers.
Well, I'll tell you something. I must have been, and I was a terrible tomboy. And it really irritated me very early on that I was a girl, because I hated wearing dresses, and I loved being in overalls. And I couldn't do a lot of the things my brothers could do. I mean, they were really, Mother was really much easier on them as far as what they could do and what we girls couldn't do. And I can understand that. I could understand it as I got older. But it was just that I really resented being a girl. And so did my younger sister, Glory. But we certainly outgrew that. And
Thank goodness.
yeah. But anyway, it was a lot of fun, and we had it was like an apartment over the garage. And during the summers, my sisters and I, my younger sisters and I, would play house, and we'd clean up the place there, and and then we had two little brothers, so we would treat them as our children. And the boys really didn't care for that, because we were bothering them and ordering them around and all that. I mean, you can imagine growing up in a big family like that. And another thing, there were two stairways going in the house. And the one stairway went all the way up to the third floor. And a lot of times, Mother didn't know that my older brothers had brought home friends who stayed overnight. And there would be these boys coming down with our boys, and their mother would be making pancakes or whatever. But she was just always so gracious and so sweet, and just a wonderful, wonderful person. We all had such respect for her.
What are your memories of growing up and going to Central High School?
Well, it was interesting then, too, because I went into high school when it was 1940. And, of course, the whole time that I was growing up in my childhood, things were happening in Europe because Hitler was coming to power. And Mother still had family over there. And so I was and also the neighborhood we lived in, there were some very anti-Semitic neighbors. And so we were really very much aware of being Jewish. And also the grade school we went to, there were maybe 4 or 5 Jewish families. In fact, Eddie Zarinsky went to Saunders. And he was the same age as, I think, my sister Glory, who was just younger than I. And the friends that I had when I was in grade school, when we got to Central, I mean, there was just such a sharp division there. And we just didn't have any more non-Jewish friends. We more or less had mostly Jewish friends. And I was in a Jewish sorority in high school, which, thank goodness, all those high school sororities have been banned. But it was a heartbreak for a lot of the Jewish girls who didn't get in, and it was terrible. And anyway, I had wonderful friends. It was a great time to be young, and Omaha was always a wonderful place to live.
Who were some of your friends in high school?
Well, Ruthie Kulikowski and Marion Livingston. Her father was the one who started the Corinne and Milton Livingston Foundation, and they were wonderful people. And let's see, Franny Blumkin, Franny Vietzer, and oh goodness, Phyllis Studna, whose mother I think had been a Milder, and then there were two girls who came to Central when I was a sophomore, and they were both from Germany, and one had been sponsored by one of the Nogs, I can't remember which one, and the other one had been sponsored by Jewel Newman. Wasn't it Jewel Newman?
I think so.
He had a grocery store.
No, Jewel.
Well, no, Harriet Newman's folks.
Oh, no, that
Sadie
wasn't-
Newman,
yeah,
Sadie, and what was her father's name?
I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
She did all the talking. I don't
Yeah.
remember his name.
They lived off of, south of Leavenworth, around Woolworth, I
Yeah, their
think.
daughter was Harriet.
Yeah, a beautiful girl. Anyway.
One of my many early loves.
Yeah. But anyway, listening to these two girls' stories, it was just heartbreaking. They had lost their families.
Was that Lori?
Lori Boasberg. She married Leonard Boasberg, and they owned the live wire cleaners. And,
Yeah, Leonard's father owned live wire cleaners,
Yeah.
and Leonard used to work there.
and he hated it.
Reluctantly.
Yeah, because he wanted to be a writer. And he eventually became the editorial page editor of the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah, he worked in Omaha. He worked for the Sun newspapers.
Yeah, he'd write a column.
Yeah.
Wonderful guy. We still keep in touch with them. And Lottie ended up marrying Jack.
Lottie Rosenberg.
Yeah. And she ended up marrying Jack, I can't remember his name. Reutzstein. Was it Reutzstein?
I don't remember.
His sister was married to her, Dr. Reutzstein. And anyway, and they moved to San Francisco. But it was just a great group of friends.
Shirley, we've got to get even with Jimmy now. He mentioned one of his loves in high school. Are you telling me about yours?
Well, I had a secret crush on Nicky Newman. He was a year ahead of me. And when I was 16, we had a party at our house. And I asked him, and I was very shy, but Nicky was such a neat guy. He was from the Hinky Dinky Newmans. And in fact, he's Murray Newman. He was Murray Newman's oldest brother and Bob Newman's. And they were a great family, or are a great family. But anyway, it was Nicky. So we were at a party at his house many years later. And he married Racky, I forget what, Heller. She was from Chicago. And we were at a party at their house one night before they moved away. And we were sitting talking. And I said to him, you know, Nicky, I had such a crush on you in high school. And he said, why didn't you ever tell me?
Well, we did get even with Jimmy, though, in this conversation. Jimmy, tell me about your high school days.
Well, my high school days were wonderful. I enjoyed high school, but it was like Shirley said, it was a revelation to me, because in grade school I went to Henry Yates grade school, and there were only a few Jewish kids at Yates. Dorothy Rikus was in. We started kindergarten together, and Buddy Goldstein and I started kindergarten together.
As a matter of fact, you and Buddy are only a few days apart.
Yeah, our ages, our birthdays are only a few days apart. And but there were only a few of us, and there was no discrimination. There was no problem at all in grade school. And when we went to Central, although I enjoyed my 4 years at Central very much, it was really a revelation, because I had in grade school, my best friend was Jim Clapper, and he lived near us, and we were together all the time. We were inseparable, and we went to high school and we lockered together. We shared a locker at Central, and I would see him at the locker, and other than that, we never saw each other. We were still friends, but not close friends, because he went his way and I went my way. He joined a fraternity, I guess it was called Leabu or something like that, and I joined
Bruno.
Rono, and but that wasn't the determining thing. We just went our own ways, and we were still friends, and we continued to be friends until he moved away and I lost track of him. But we didn't. There was a 5 o'clock curtain. Our social lives didn't intertwine at all, and this extended to other people. And at that time, it was very, very unusual for Jewish boys to date non-Jewish girls. It happened occasionally, but nowhere like it is today.
It was when our kids went to Central and West Side.
Yeah, but Central was a wonderful school, and I credit Central with helping me to whatever success I've had.
Did you go on to the university?
Yes, I went on to the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and I joined ZBT fraternity, and associated with a wonderful group of guys. And I started out in pre-med, and then I decided I really didn't want to be a doctor, in spite of my mother's protestations. And because she would have liked to have had a son who's a doctor, as every Jewish mother would at that time. And I changed to an economics major. And then when in my senior year, I was editor of the, and people have a hard time understanding that at this time, and people that know me now, but at that time I became editor of the campus humor magazine, the Ogwan, and I was the editor in my senior year, except that in December of 1941, as some of you may have remembered or have read, there was an event called Pearl Harbor, and that changed all our lives. And so 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor, I quit school just before the end of the first semester of my senior year, and enlisted in the Army, in the Air Corps, the Army, U.S. Army Air Corps at that time, as a private, and that began a whole new chapter in my life.
We're going to get back to that, but Shirley, did you go on to college?
Oh, yes.
Where did you go?
I went to UCLA, and then I got very homesick, and I went back and I went to the University of Omaha at the time. And in my junior year, I met Jimmy, and as nice Jewish girls did at that time, we got married. And that's where I've been ever since. And we have three great kids.
Were you both in college when you met?
No.
Did you know each other?
No, I had gotten out of the Army. This was in I knew Shirley's older siblings, her older brothers and sisters. Sister, in long before. All three of her, Irving, Norman, and Harry were all at Central High School when I was there.
And Sissy.
And Sissy Helen, her older sister Sissy, she and I were in the same class at Central. But I had never met Shirley.
I was a child.
Yes, and this is quite a story of how we met. When I came back from the service from overseas, and after I had been in business for a while in Omaha, the ZBT fraternity in Lincoln was having a fraternity party, and I got an invitation to come, and I had a date with a girl.
From Des Moines.
Yeah, from Des Moines. She was working as a teacher, I think, in Council Bluffs. And she called that day and said she couldn't come to the party because her mother was ill and she had to go to Des Moines to be with her mother. So I wasn't going to go, and my mother said, "Go, maybe you'll meet somebody." So I drove down to Lincoln, and I was enjoying myself at the party, and I spied a girl dancing on the floor with a good friend of mine, Bucky Greenberg. And Bucky and I had been friends for forever. And so I cut in and I danced with it was Shirley, and I danced with Shirley and I met her, and there began a lasting friendship. And as luck would have it, Bucky was a pledge at the fraternity because he had transferred from
Ames,
Iowa, from the University,
Iowa State.
Iowa State at Ames. And so he was a pledge, and he came over to me and he said, "Would you mind driving my date back to Omaha, because I have to stay down here and clean up the house, help clean up the fraternity house."
And so, I didn't want to stay.
So I readily acceded to his request, and Shirley and I drove back to Omaha. By the time we got back to Omaha, it was a done deal. We were Bucky unfortunately never saw Shirley again, in the same way, and that was October 26th, and it was a banner day in my
1946.
life. Yeah, 1946.
Now, Shirley, how did he impress you when you first saw him?
Well, I'll tell you something. Having had 6 brothers, I was not too fond of boys. I mean, especially 4 older brothers. I mean, the teasing and and like I say, I didn't know much about anything. And anyhow, when I met Jimmy, it was just a pleasure. I mean, he was almost 6 years older than I was. He'd been in the Army, he'd been to university, and been to the Army, and he was a man. I didn't have to go through all the junk that the girls have to go through with a lot of our, a lot of boyfriends and stuff. And anyway, I could talk to him. I was comfortable with him, and I've been comfortable with him ever since.
So anyway, that was October 26th, and we decided we wanted to get married in January. And Shirley's mother asked us to wait until March because she wanted to have a big wedding, and she wanted Shirley's next younger sister, Gloria, to be able to be in the wedding party. And Gloria was going to school at the University of Minnesota, and spring vacation was in March. So she scheduled the wedding on March 23rd.
Yeah.
And so that was it. The wedding was on March 23rd, and it was a gala event in the ballroom of the Paxton Hotel. And why the ballroom of the Paxton Hotel? Because at that time, that was the biggest ballroom available in Omaha. And as Shirley, I think, alluded to earlier, when Shirley's mother would meet people, she'd say, "Shirley and Jimmy are getting married on March 23rd. Come on to the wedding." So it was wall-to-wall people.
Shirley, tell me about the wedding.
I'll tell you really about the wedding because it just flashed back in my mind. We all had belonged to Bethel for years. We had started out at Temple Israel when we were young kids, but then when Bethel was created like, when was it, in the 30s or 40s? We went there. So when I was going to the University of Omaha, I took a couple of classes from Rabbi Moshewitz. I think his name was Israel.
Moshewitz.
Yeah, and he spoke a very broken English, and he was the Orthodox rabbi. Anyway, he taught. I can't remember what.
Some kind of a humanities course.
Yeah, two of them, and they were night classes, and teachers from all over the city were jammed his classes. God, I wish I could remember the names of them. But anyhow, I was so taken with that man and the charisma and the warmth of him that I told Mother that, and I'm sorry to say Rabbi Kripke was there, but he had just come to Omaha. But I told Mother, I said, I want Rabbi Moshewitz to officiate at our wedding. Well, Rabbi Moshewitz there was a cantor there. I don't know if you remember.
Cantor.
Yeah. And Cantor was very small, and he wore this tall hat, whatever it is they wear. And anyway, and March was so hot that year. And of course I had on a satin gown. Rabbi Moshewitz officiated at our wedding. And you want me to talk about Cantor? Anyway, he had Cantor was associated with him. And it was a very, very hot Sunday in March. And anyway, Cantor, when he would sing Mazel Tov, he just rolled his eyes back into his head. I mean, it was just a wonderful moment.
But it was funny.
Yeah. But he was just darling. And I forget what I said.
Well, you were wearing
a satin gown,
and it was hot, and you were sweating.
Oh, terrible. But it was such a joy, it really was a joyous occasion. And Rabbi Moshewitz was just so elegant in what he had to say. And apparently whatever he said meant something to the two of us, because we'll be married 60 years next month. But
who are some of your attendants?
All my sisters. All my sisters.
And how about you, Jim?
Well, my best man was Joe Kirschenbaum, who now he owned Wolf Brothers in Omaha, and now he lives in Palm Springs or Palm Desert or wherever it is out there. And there were other attendants. Shirley's whole family was there, and so was mine. My nieces.
We had ring bearers.
Yeah, my nieces, and they were ring bearers and candle lighters, and it was a gala affair. And I remember that the Judge Palmer.
He was a district judge.
After a few drinks, he was playing the piano and singing, and it was a gala affair. And then Shirley and I slipped away, and we went to the Chieftain Hotel in Council Bluffs, and that's where we spent our wedding night.
And when we went into the coffee shop the next morning, people would say, "Are you newlyweds?" And then we went to Excelsior Springs. It was our first stop. We went down to Gulfport, Mississippi, and
New Orleans.
New Orleans,
first, yeah.
How did you travel in those days?
Drove. There was no other way except a bus.
So anyway.
Or a train.
So anyway, Jimmy made a bargain with me, or I made a bargain with Jimmy. There would be no night driving. Well, of course we did. He was anxious to get down to New Orleans, so we had to go through the Ozarks, and those roads there, are very, very curvy. So here we are, driving in the middle of nowhere on a curvy road.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah. And what happens? We get a flat tire. Well, We
But
should,
our marriage survived.
yes, yes. But anyway, it was a great time.
What kind of work were you doing at that time, Jim?
Well, when I got out of the Army in 1946, I was in the service for 52 months. And when I got out, I did various things. I sold plumbing on the road. I called on plumbers and hardware stores in small towns and stayed in hotel rooms with a rope coiled up in the corner tied to a radiator, which was the fire escape. And I did that for a short time. And then eventually I went into the war surplus business. And I did that I had a company, I named it National Jobbing Company. I did that for a couple of years, and that's when we got married. I was still in that business. And then I decided I really didn't.
And the business was out on North 24th,
I had
next to Schukert's Market.
yeah.
So he had rats in the walls.
It was an experience, and I did most of my business. I initiated a mail order business, and that's how I did 95% of my business was mail order. And I developed quite a mail order business, and then I had known Millard Rosenberg for many years, and we were good friends. And he was working for Hinky Dinky at that time, and he used to stop by on Saturday, and we'd chew the fat. And somehow we decided that we wanted to start an advertising agency. Neither of us had ever worked for an advertising agency and really didn't know much about it, but we decided that's what we wanted to do. So I liquidated my business, and Millard gave notice at Hinky Dinky, and we each went to the bank with $300 and started our business, Universal Advertising Agency. And then we didn't hire anybody. We were the sole proprietors and operators. And I bought a war surplus typewriter for $25. And I bought 2 desks, one for $5 and I think one for $7. I bought a bunch of wooden filing cabinets for $2 a piece, and that was our equipment. And we bought some paper, and we were in business. And well, this is a long story. I don't know if you want to get into this whole thing. So anyway, I had been buying a lot of my war surplus merchandise from Superior Sales Company, which was owned by Louis Katz and Sam Goodman. And Louis Katz and I had developed a very close friendship. And of course I was friendly with Sam Goodman too, but Louis and I were really, really close buddies. And when I liquidated my business, I had some expertise in the mail order business by then, and they had opened Rank's store on 16th Street, 16th and I think about Howard. It was a war surplus retail store, and they wanted to get into the mail order business. So that was our first client. We didn't go in the agency business to get that client, but after we decided we wanted to have an agency, then Louis asked us to do his mail order advertising, and we did catalogs and flyers and so on, and also I sold him my mailing list from my business. So that was our first client. And then, interestingly, one of our other early clients was Borsheim's on 16th and Howard, 16th and Harney, Simon Gorelick, and
Mrs. B's brother,
Friedman.
Ike, Isidore.
Yeah, Isidore Friedman, I guess. Ike Friedman's father. And that was one of our first clients. And gradually we developed a rather impressive list of clients, and we were successful. And Millard and I were together for 20 years and enjoyed a very fine relationship. And then after 20 years, we thought it would be better if we would separate. And so we separated. We divided up our business right down the middle. I took half of the clients, and Millard took half. And we were in, I had J. Lipsey and Associates, and Millard had Millard Rosenberg Advertising, and we both operated our own businesses. And among our clients, we had a lot of the Jewish businesses in Omaha. We had Hinky Dinky. I wouldn't call Brandeis a Jewish business exactly, but the Brandeis were Jewish, and that was one of our good clients. Rosa Novak was a long-time client. And our clients were not exclusively Jewish. We didn't discriminate, but
Beardmore.
yeah, we had several car dealers. We had in addition to Rosa Novak, we had Beardmore Chevrolet, and we had Nisley Chevrolet in Lincoln, and of course we had Novak Cadillac, and then we had Paxton and Veerling Steel Company. We had we had a long list of clients, fortunately, and so altogether I was in the agency business for 30 years, and then our oldest son Bob had been working with me for about 5 years, and Shirley and I decided to move out to Tucson. So Bob took over the agency, and I commuted from Tucson for a couple of years. Spent about a week out of every month in Omaha, and then I confined my activity mostly to the telephone, although I visited Omaha frequently. And eventually I separated entirely from the agency, and Bob ran it for 20 years, and then he moved out to Tucson.
Something you left out, Jim, that
Yes.
is really important is he was recalled during Korea.
And yes, I forgot about that.
I want to go back, and I missed that. I want to go back and get your military career. Then we'll get to the Korea.
Oh, okay. Well, my military career was long, but
He was lucky.
somewhat uneventful, considering what a lot of others went through. As I said, I quit school 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor, and Irv Simon, who was a very good friend of mine, and a cousin of Shirley's, he kept urging me to join him and enlist in the Army Air Corps at that time. Well, I decided 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor, he and I went down to the post office and enlisted, and then we went to Fort Leavenworth, and then to Biggs Field, to the Shepherd Field in Texas, in Wichita Falls, Texas, for basic training. And then both of us went to aircraft armorers school in Denver. And when we graduated from aircraft armorers school, I was picked out as an instructor and Irv was picked out to go to India. That's the breaks of the game in the Army.
Well, that was terrible for him.
Yeah, it was terrible for him and for
He,
Miriam.
he was on the Burma Pass, wasn't he, working out?
No.
I thought he was.
Different. Anyway, so I was, the aircraft armorer school was in Denver, and I was there for almost 2 years, and I was itching to go overseas. I wanted to go overseas and fight. I wanted to be I originally, when I enlisted, I wanted to be a pilot, but unfortunately, I'm colorblind, and you can't be colorblind and be a pilot, I discovered. I passed all the other tests, but I was disqualified because I was colorblind. So I kept taking the color test, and I couldn't pass it. And I had an uncle in Omaha who was an eye, ear, nose, and throat doctor, Dr. Phil Romanek. So when I was home on leave, at first the color test they gave was yarn. They showed you pieces of yarn, different color, and I couldn't identify those. And then they changed to a book called and it had the Ishihara test in it. It had circles with dots, and I couldn't see the numbers in those dots. And so when I went home on leave, I asked my uncle if he had that Ishihara book, and he did, and I borrowed it, and I memorized all the dots. So when I got back, I went to the surgeon, and I said, I want to take the test again. So he gave me the test, and they used a different book. So I failed, so I couldn't be, not only couldn't be a pilot, I wanted to be an aerial gunner. And I couldn't be an aerial gunner because they couldn't be colorblind either for some reason, which was ridiculous. Anyway, so I was stuck in Denver, and I was very happy there. I had a wonderful time. All the fellows were gone, and the town was full of young girls, and it was a glorious time. But I wanted to go overseas, so I figured the only way I'll get overseas is to go to OCS, Officer Candidate School. So I applied for Officer Candidate School. Well, in the meantime, I got to be a staff sergeant, and I had a very cushy job. I was writing the curriculum for the bomb racks division of the Aircraft Armorers School, and I had an office, and it was I was in hog heaven as far as that was concerned. But I wanted to go fight the Nazis, so I got into OCS and went to Miami Beach, and I was in OCS. I graduated as a second lieutenant, and I thought for sure now I'll go overseas. And they sent me to Biggs Field in
Texas.
El Paso, Texas. Well, as I was saying about El Paso, Texas, I was at Biggs Field in El Paso, Texas, and I had gone there I graduated from OCS as an aircraft armament officer, armament and chemical officer. Well, when I got to El Paso, to Biggs Field, they didn't need an armament officer, but they needed a gunnery officer. So I became a gunnery officer. And they had a gunnery school there, training aerial gunners. It was a ground training school for aerial gunners, because these kids that came there to be aerial gunners didn't know anything about guns or machine guns or pistols or shotguns or anything else, or lead, how to shoot something that's moving crosswise. So this school had several gun ranges. They had a shotgun range where we had a skeet range, so that they could shoot the birds, the clay pigeons, as they went horizontally, and that taught them that when you shoot something, you don't shoot at it, you shoot ahead of it, because you had to have what they call lead. So the first job I got was to run the shotgun range, the skeet range. So I did that, and in conjunction with the skeet range there was a .45 pistol range, because at that time the officers were all the flying personnel were armed with .45 caliber pistols, which were really ridiculous, but that's what they were armed with. So I taught how to shoot the .45 pistol, and how to shoot the shotguns, and establish the necessity for lead when you shoot at something moving in a transverse motion. So then I was promoted from that to the machine gun range. And here we had a whole line of machine guns mounted on tripods, and also machine guns in operating turrets, so that the aerial gunners could learn how to operate the turrets, and how to operate the machine guns on the stands, as they would in as a waist gunner in a bomber. So I ran that range for a while, and then I was moved up to be to run the school. The school had all these ranges, and then it had a lot of classrooms, and we had classroom instruction. So then I had an office and a desk and a whole business, and I was running the school. And I did that for several months, and it so happened there was my boss was a colonel who was from Omaha, Sandy Parisello, and his sister had owned.
Paracello's down near the
It wasn't Parisello's, it was.
The Italian restaurant right across the street from the Burlington station.
Yeah, and we were very good friends of his sister, and he was an attorney in Omaha, although I didn't know him in Omaha. But we established a good friendship, and I kept after him, and I wanted to go overseas. And he told me I was crazy, because he had just come back from overseas, and he didn't like it. Anyhow, I told him I wanted to go, and he said, well, I won't release you. And so I kept after him for several months, and finally he said, okay, I'll let you go. So, and this was in about, well, it was right before VE Day in Europe. So when I got orders to go to Europe, and I went home on leave, and then from home I went to Greensboro, North Carolina, to stage to go over to Europe, to go overseas to Europe, the European theater. And while I was in Greensboro, they changed my orders and sent me to Kearns, Utah, to stage to go to the Pacific. So that's what happened, and then from Kearns, Utah, I was there only a few days, and then I went to California, to Camp Stoneman, and we staged to go to the Pacific, and then we boarded a ship, and I was on the ship for 30 days, and we landed in Manila. And I still didn't have any orders. I was just there, and I was in a replacement depot in Manila, living in a tent, and I was there for a while, and then they moved. I got orders to move to Clark Field in the Philippines, which was up north of Manila. And while I was at Clark Field, I got a hold of a Jewish chaplain, because I knew that my cousin Eve Marks from Omaha was a colonel on General Kruger's staff in, I forget the name of the town in the Philippines. So I got a hold of him on the phone, and he sent a jeep down with a driver to pick me up and take me up to his camp up there. So I went up there, and I was dressed in my fatigues and a gun and the whole business. And here I walk into this place where he was, and it was like the United States. It was they had an officers club, a senior officers club. We went in, we had a drink, and people looked at me like I was a freak. Here I look like I'm in a war, and the rest of them are all dressed up. And anyhow, so I stayed there a couple days, and we played tennis and had Filipino ball boys, and it was really a life of luxury there. So I stayed a couple days, and then I went back down to my camp at Clark Field, and then I finally got orders to go to Okinawa. So we flew to Okinawa, and we landed in Okinawa, and there I sat in a replacement depot there. And nobody knew where anybody was or what was happening. It's remarkable that we won the war. I just have to believe that the Japanese army was more disorganized than we were. Anyway, but I wanted to go join whatever outfit I was going to join. I wanted to do something. So I found out that I had to talk to was a major up someplace, I don't know, 25, 30 miles north of where I was on Okinawa. So I borrowed a Jeep and I drove up there alone. And at that time there were still Japanese in the hills. It was crazy, but I was lucky. And he wrote me orders to go join the 85th Aerodrome Squadron on Aishima, which was a small island separated by about 13 miles from Okinawa. The island became famous. It was the place where Ernie Pyle was killed, and it was incidentally the closest American-held island to Japan. Anyhow, so you had to do everything yourself. Nobody cared where you went or what happened to you or anything. So I got a ride on another airplane over to Aishima, and I found the 85th Aerodrome Squadron and told them I was there, and then I stayed there until we moved up to, after the war was over, we moved up to Japan as occupation troops, and I was involved in a very interesting thing that happened when I was on Aishima, and I wrote a little thing about it, and I entitled it "My Moment in History," because this happened to me while I was on Aishima. And I don't know if you want me to read this or not, but I can't remember the details, but it's essentially what happened. I was an aircraft armament and chemical officer. So one day I was fulfilling my armament capability or responsibilities there. And one day I got a message from the island commander's office that I was to appear at the island commander's office right away. So I went over there. I had no idea what was going on. I walk into this big room, and the room was full of generals and colonels and whoever, and they were all standing around a big table, and they were all waiting for me. I walked in. They had a dispatch from General MacArthur that their chemical officer was supposed to paint 2 white crosses on a designated runway, which happened to be the runway that my squadron was in charge of, and that 2 Japanese Betty airplanes, which were small bombers, which the Japanese stole the plans for from our DC-3 or C-47. It was the same airplane essentially, and these 2 Japanese Bettys would be painted white with green crosses on them. They were to come and land on this designated runway with the two white crosses. And so So they told me to go ahead and paint the crosses. They gave me the dimensions. MacArthur's dispatch had the exact dimensions of the crosses, how long, how wide, and everything. So the only reason I can figure out is that they called on me for this delicate task was that I was a chemical officer. Well, I had no idea, and lime is a chemical, I guess. So I had no idea where the lime was, but I found the lime. I found some lime. I got some brooms. I got a crew of fellas, and we went down and we got the water from the ocean in buckets, and we went up and we painted these crosses on the runway, and then we waited for the Japanese Betties to appear. Well, we waited and waited and waited, and they didn't show up. And then all kinds of rumors started that the Japanese were backing out of the surrender. And what was supposed to happen is the surrender party was to fly in on their Japanese Betties, and MacArthur had sent his C-54 up to Aishima, and they were to get out of we were to impound the crew in our stockade, and the surrender negotiating party was to get out of the Betties and get on the C-54 and fly to Manila to meet with MacArthur. Well, so we waited and nothing happened. So they told us to open our runway again, and the plane started landing, and that would erase the crosses. Then I got another call to come to the island commander's office. I went over there and they got another dispatch and said to do this again, and then they changed the dimensions of the crosses for some reason, if that seems important to them, I guess. So we painted the crosses again, and then we watched the skies and scanned the skies to see if these Betties would come in. Finally, here are these two specks in the sky, and I've got pictures of these planes coming and landing, and these little short Japanese people getting off of the planes, and the officers were all dressed in their officers' uniforms with swords and the whole business. And they got off their planes. They got on the C-54. We put the crews in our stockade, and one of the Betties had run off the end of the runway. It had defective brakes, and our mechanics repaired it. And then when the surrender party came back, they got back in their Betties, and the crew. We released the crew, and they got back on their airplanes, and they flew back to Japan. And that was that was a very exciting time, and I was right up there with the Life magazine photographers and the rest of them taking pictures of this whole transfer of the surrender party from their Japanese Betties to the C-54. So there was a big crowd there. It was a very exciting time, but I've never seen I never saw any publicity on it. I've never read anything about it any place. It's one of those things that history didn't think was important. And then the surrender actually took place in Tokyo Harbor, but the negotiations took place in Manila. And that was an interesting moment in a kind of a boring overseas existence. We had some bombings and some other excitement, but fortunately, I guess although I hankered for it, I was never involved in any. I never shot at anybody. Had anybody shoot at me knowingly. They dropped some bombs and stuff, but they didn't know I was there.
Well, Shirley, let's go talk about your children now.
All right. Bob is living here. He's retired. And Sally, our daughter, is living here. She's a teacher at one of the high schools here.
Teaching English.
Yeah, she's an English teacher. And Joe, our youngest one, moved out here about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And he's working for a very interesting company. Jimmy, you can explain that company. It's a global company.
Yeah, this is a company. Do you remember the name of it?
Yeah. Something about global systems.
No. I have to look because
Modular.
Modular Mining Systems.
Yeah.
Modular Mining Systems is the name of the company. It's a very large company, but nobody that I've ever talked to in Tucson knows it's here. It was founded in Tucson, and the founder is still living here, and he's the chairman of the board of the company, and is still active with the company. The company was sold a few years ago to Komatsu, a Japanese company, which is the worldwide competitor of Caterpillar. Okay, Joe went to work for a company here called Modular Mining Systems. It was founded in Tucson, and the founder is still here, and he's the chairman of the board of Modular Mining Systems, and is still active in the business. The business was sold to the company was sold to Komatsu, a large Japanese heavy equipment manufacturing company. They're the worldwide competitor, major competitor of Caterpillar in the heavy equipment business, and they manufacture a lot of the heavy equipment that's also used in the mining business. Modular Mining Systems is in the business of producing software for the mining industry, software to operate the heavy equipment, to operate the trucks, these gigantic trucks and cranes and earth movers and so on, move around these open pit copper mines all over the world, and it's important that they be directed to be at the right place at the right time, because it's very expensive and time-consuming to move this equipment around. And so they manufacture, or they produce, software that positions the equipment at the right place. They have offices in their headquarters is in Tucson. They have offices, other major offices are in Johannesburg, in Recife, Brazil, in
Sydney, Australia.
Santiago, Chile, and they have and in Vancouver, British Columbia. They have other offices in Indonesia and I don't know, some more places. And Joe, our son, his title is Global Manager of Human Resources, and he's responsible for the human resources management in all of these places. So he has traveled to all of them. He hasn't been to Indonesia, and I think that's about the only place he hasn't been. He's been to Australia and Brazil and Chile and Vancouver
And they've really been cultural shocks,
yes.
and especially, I think, Johannesburg.
But he has an assistant who loves to travel. Joe doesn't like to travel. He has an assistant who loves to travel, and so the assistant has been doing most of the traveling lately, and Joe hasn't had to travel as much as he did before. But he loves what he's doing, and apparently the people there at the company think he's doing a good job, and he's progressed very well at the company. Our oldest son, Bob, came and joined me in the advertising agency in Omaha, and as I've said before, he was with me for several years, and then we moved out here to Tucson, and Bob took over the agency, and I commuted because as far as my clients were concerned, I was still in Omaha. They knew I was in Tucson, but I saw them as often as I ever had, because I saw them once a month, and I came back to Omaha, and I was there long enough to meet with them and take care of whatever business there was. And then Bob took care of all the production and then the follow-up. And he also was handling, he was acting as an account executive and handling a lot of the clients. And as time went on, he handled more and more and more, and I kept moving more and more into the background. So gradually, I just disappeared, and Bob was running the agency, and he ran the agency for 20 years and was very successful. And then he closed the agency. Small advertising agencies are hard to sell because it's a personal service business. And if you don't sell yourself, if you don't stay with it, you don't have much to sell, because you can't force your clients to go with whoever buys the agency. So there's nothing really to sell. It's like if you're a doctor or a dentist, I suppose. It's the same kind of a thing. You have a practice, but you can't force people to stay there. Anyway, then Bob, he got involved in the real estate business and in rehabbing houses, and was very successful, and did quite well at it. And then he moved to Tucson. All of our kids at one time said they would never move to Tucson, but all of them eventually have, and they're all here. But anyway, Bob moved to Tucson, and he's really enjoying it and loving it, and he's really semi-retired. He has a real estate license, and he does some real estate, but he doesn't spend a lot of time at it. He's also a personal trainer. He got certified as a personal trainer, and he as he explained it to me, he wants to work out every day. He's very physical and in excellent shape, and so he gets paid for it now as a personal trainer.
And as a fitness instructor.
Yeah, and as a fitness instructor, he instructs. He has classes in water aerobics, and he teaches spinning, which is something that young people know about, and people my age don't know about unless they have a son that's involved in it, or a child that's involved in it, probably. And so anyway, that's the story of Bob, and he's very happy here, and he now lives just about 3 minutes from us here, and that's really great. We see him a lot. We see all our kids a lot. Sally is teaching English at Saguaro High School. She's been a teacher for 31 years, and she loves it, and her students love her, and she's just having she's really enjoying it. And then I've talked about Joe. So then we have Bob's daughter Suzanne is married to John Marcus, and they have 3 children, and Shirley will tell you about them. And so we have those 3 grandchildren, and we have Bob is a grandfather, and then we have three great grandchildren, and Shirley will tell you about them.
Well, Suzanne was a weather forecaster on, I think it was KMTV in Omaha. She was known as Suzanne Matthews. And she did that for a long time. And now she's busy raising 3 children. And the last one is about 6 months old now. And
Elizabeth, Jack, and Joe.
Yeah. And then Bob has a son, 2 boys who still live in Omaha too. One of them is out here right now. He's in Flagstaff with his fiancée. She is just getting her master's in technical writing. But her family is in Omaha, and they're going back in about another 4 weeks.
Yeah, Ben is in Omaha.
Yeah,
And Nick is in Flagstaff.
yeah. And we get to see them maybe once a year or so. They'll come out. And Sally has 2 children, and she has a daughter who was just past the bar in Boston, Massachusetts. And then Sally has a son who's younger, who's in his, finishing about his sophomore year in college. And we see them, we see him all the time, Sally's son. And Jim,
Sally's daughter's name is Gemma,
yeah,
and the son's name is
Evan.
Evan.
yeah. And those kids have really brought a lot of joy to our lives. And our kids too. And it's just marvelous having our 3 children out here now. And we see them a lot.
Shirley, I want you to tell me a little bit about what you've been doing in your life after raising children.
Well, early on, after Jimmy and I got married, before I started having the kids, the National Council of Jewish Women sponsored a program where they asked for volunteers to volunteer at what was then, I don't know what it's called now, maybe it's the same name, but the Child Saving Institute, which was over near Children's Hospital and where the Clarkson Hospital is now. I guess it's on the campus of the Nebraska Medical School. But anyway, I did a lot of volunteering there, and I was a sociology major while I was in school, and I've always been interested in the downtrodden. And anyway, so out here, well, in Omaha, I became involved with what was called the Panel of American Women, and this was in the 60s. And there was a Jewish woman on the panel, a Catholic woman, a black woman, and a Protestant. And it was all about how people are discriminated against and who is and who isn't. And anyway, I did that for several years, and I served on the Federation Board. Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jewish Federation.
Yeah. And
You were the rabble-rouser on the
Yeah.
Federation. Because the Federation Board at that time was very conservative.
And all old people, all old men. I was the only woman on it then. And then during the 60s too, I went south. I was down in Jackson, Mississippi with a group of women from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And they were just getting ready to desegregate the schools in the South.
It was called Wednesdays.
Yeah, Wednesdays in Mississippi. In fact, it was just recognized or got some sort of a recognition at the White House this past year, because it was 40 years ago that we did that. And
She went down there just very shortly after the 2 young men were
3.
killed
Murdered,
down
yeah.
there. The volunteers, I forget their names. I shouldn't.
Well, 2 of them were Jewish.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've always tried to do the right thing and set an example for our kids.
I want to hear from both of you a little bit about your life here in Tucson.
Well, we've had a charmed life here in Tucson, and we just love it. When we came here in 1975, we were young. See, I was 54, and Shirley was 48. So we were still young, and we were ready to get away from the rat race that I was in. I had been in for 30 years, but and I wasn't feeling too well at the time. But I still wanted to do things, and of course Shirley was still feeling very, very active, and then she wanted to do things. So I didn't really retire. I shifted gears. We came out here to ride horses. Both of us loved to ride, and we had been coming here to vacation in the winter for 15 years prior to 1975. We started in 1960. In 1960, I had just completed I handled a lot of political campaigns. I was what they now call a consultant. They hadn't invented that term yet for political campaigns, but I was what's now called a consultant, and I got paid a lot less than they do now. But because in the campaigns then, they didn't spend the kind of money they do now. And I had just handled the campaign for Carl Curtis for the Senate in 1960, and I recall the total budget was $200,000, which is amazing when now they spend 10, 15, 20 million for the same motions. Anyway, we came out here to vacation, and then we came out every year thereafter for a week or 10 days, and we came to the Tanque Verde Ranch and the predecessor ranch for a couple of years before that. And we rode horses. Well, in the 15th year we were here, we met a couple, and this woman was telling us about some land they just bought here, and they said, you gotta buy something here, you gotta. So she said, let me have my real estate agent get in touch with you. So I said, well, okay, we're not ready to retire, but okay. So the real estate agent got in touch with us. He took us to a place, to a house, showed us a house, and we fell in love with it. It was a little ranch, 5 acres. They call it a ranch here. And it had a house, and it had a studio where there'd been an artist who lived there. And he'd made this building into a studio, and it also had it was 5 acres. So we looked at some more places, came back, looked at that, went back to Omaha, I made an offer on it, and we dickered for a while, and we finally bought it. And then we figured that we would use it as a vacation house. Well, within 6 months we were living here. In October we moved some of our furniture out. We kept our house in Omaha, and we moved into the house here. And then we went back to Omaha frequently. And then eventually Bob took our house in Omaha, which was on 88th Street. And so we were here full time with one house. And we added a swimming pool to our place, and we fenced in our corral, and we had 2 horses, and we started adopting dogs and buying dogs, and we had 10 to 12 dogs, and we had two riding horses, and we lived adjacent to the Saguaro National Monument, which is now the Saguaro National Park East. It's near the east end of Broadway. And it was an idyllic existence. We rode horseback every day in the monument, which is now the park. So in effect, we had a 60,000-acre backyard, and it was just wonderful. We'd go out in the morning. Shirley would fix a couple of sandwiches. We'd go out and we'd find a nice place, and we'd stop and we'd sit by a burbling brook or something, and or in a scenic place, and we'd eat our lunch and get back on our horses and ride, and it was just wonderful. We did that for 12 and a half years, and then we decided that it was time to shift gears again and move back into the city. So we came out here, which we're not really in the city now, but we're in the county, but it's like the city. We should be in the city. And we found this lot and built this house that we're in now. In the meantime, I wasn't really financially able to retire at that time. I had made some money in the advertising business, but I wasn't able to retire in the style that I would like to be, so I went to work. And I started out I started to learn the real estate business here. In Omaha, I had dabbled in real estate. Shirley and I both dabbled in real estate. We had bought some apartment houses, and one of them Shirley managed, and I managed the others, and also I had some commercial property. But I really didn't know what I was doing. I was fortunate, things worked out well, but I hadn't gotten deeply into it. And when we moved out here, I liquidated all of that. And so I learned the real estate business here. I didn't want to be a real estate agent or broker, but I wanted to invest in real estate. And at the time we moved out here, real estate was in the pits. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. There were for sale signs everywhere. And so I inquired around and found the most knowledgeable person in Tucson who on the subject of real estate, and I went to see him, and I asked him if he would instruct me in the real estate market here. So I bought a few hours of his time, and he did, and I learned a lot, and I continued to work in real estate here, real estate investment, and it has worked out very well for me. And then I got involved in securities investments, and I've done mostly that for the past several years, and I spend a lot of time at it. Along the way, both Shirley and I have gotten involved with social service agencies in Tucson. In 2001, we decided that we wanted to get involved in the domestic violence field, because we felt that was a pressing problem, and a problem that wasn't receiving much attention, and that it was an area of social services that was not attractive to people. A lot of people are attracted to giving money to museums, to universities, to the symphony, and that's all fine. But those are the things that they attract a lot of money. The social service agencies in the domestic violence field, that's not a pretty thing, and so it doesn't attract people the kind of contributions of money that some of the others do. So we investigated it, and we settled on the Tucson Centers for Women and Children. It's a domestic violence agency that to fight domestic violence. They have shelters for abused women, and so we became very involved in that, and I have been serving on the board of Tucson Centers for Women and Children since about January of 2002. And it's been very gratifying to us, and we think we've been able to make a difference. And we have made it a major beneficiary of our contributions to social service agencies. We were able to buy a building for the Tucson Centers for Women and Children. And they insisted on calling it the Lipsey Center, and over my objections, but I couldn't stop it unless I told them absolutely not, and I didn't want to do that. So anyhow, it's very gratifying, and I spend a lot of time with it, and Shirley has devoted time to it also. Before that, in Omaha, we were very active in a lot of things, and Shirley has alluded to the things she's done, which were remarkable. And I was, in Omaha, I was one of the founding members of Boys Clubs of Omaha. There were 24 men who were founding members. And as far as I know, I'm the only survivor. And it's not because I'm so healthy, it's just that I was younger than most of the others. I was, at the time, I think I was, well, I was the youngest member of the Board of Governors, of the founding members of the Boys Clubs of Omaha. And I don't think there are any other survivors of the 24. Al Sorensen was he was the spark plug. He was the man that really put it all together. And he and Ed Shafton and I really did all the heavy lifting, and Al Sorensen, somehow, I don't know how he got a hold of me, but I did a lot of work, and so did Ed Shafton. And Ed Shafton and I actually did the heavy lifting, and Al Sorensen did the thinking. We've spent a long time here now talking about our lives and what we've done, and how everything has happened, and what's happened in our lives, and how our children have influenced our lives. But we haven't said yet, and we do want to say to our children, because I hope that at some point they will see this and watch this, and I hope they enjoy it. We want to tell you, our children, and our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren, that the most important thing in our lives has been our ability to have a family like we have, our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We are so fortunate. All the things we've done, all the things we've tried to do, and whatever successes we've had, and failures, we've done it all for you, our children, and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And we can only wish the best for you, because you've given us so much pleasure and so much happiness all through our lives. And now, at this time in our lives, when things are changing a little bit, our positions are changing, and now it has been your opportunity, our children, to do things for us, and gee, you've come through in spades. You're all so wonderful. There's no way we can thank you or wish for anything more than what you've given us.
Well, now that you've heard our lives, and you've heard about what we've done, Dad and I just want to say what a joy it's been to have you kids.